meeting to order. Dr. Means, will you help us with a roll call?
Mr. Davis.
Here.
Mr. Birdie. Here. Ms. Davis.
Here.
Mr. Bybee.
Here.
Ms. Williams.
Here.
Dr. Knox.
Here.
Ms. Thornton.
Here.
Thank you. We will begin our meeting tonight with, if you'll join us, stand and join us in the silent meditation and then the pledge of allegiance. Thank you. At this time, the Board of Education would like to recognize the achievements and awards to staff and students of the Clark County School District.
Good evening, Mr. President, Superintendent, and members of the Board of Education. Tonight, I have the privilege of honoring many outstanding individuals in the Clark County School District. Honorees, I will call your name, and as I do, we ask that you come up, receive your certificate, shake the hands of the board members, and then you may return to your seat. Our first recognition tonight is for the Better Everyday Award for November 2018. We had about 15 nominees in our second month of this recognition, and it was very difficult to choose because we had many outstanding individuals who serve our students daily in Clark County. All of those who were recognized will receive certificates because we decided that they deserve to know that someone thinks that they are doing an excellent job in making Clark County School District better every day. However, we did choose one winner for the month, and for this month it is Jesse Evans, civics teacher at Cedar Shoals High School. Mr. Evans. Organized a voter registration drive for students who were going to be eligible to vote on November 6, 2018. He then coordinated a vote together day in which the students went to the Board of Elections office downtown to take part in early voting and also to learn about state and local government functions and roles with local officials and community members leading the discussions. Mr. Evans made sure the students had time to research all of the candidates so they could enter the ballot box as educated voters. His commitment to engaging his students in their education is evident in the way he went above and beyond in this classroom lesson about civic engagement. This endeavor inspired students at Clark Central High School to also arrange their own outing the following week. We commend Mr. Evans' enthusiasm and dedication. Teachers like him are what makes CCSD better every day. Congratulations. Heidi Hill was named a finalist for the Phil Pickens Parent Mentor Leadership Award. This award is given at the Parent Mentor Partnership Fall Conference in Savannah, Georgia every year. Presented annually, the Phil Pickens Award acknowledges the hard work and dedication of a special education administrator and a parent mentor for their leadership roles. The award is named for the late Phil Pickens, former special education director for the state of Georgia and founder of the Georgia Parent Mentor Partnership. Ms. Hill was nominated because of her leadership in the local school district, the region, and the state. The Georgia Parent Mentor Partnership is a joint initiative between the Georgia State Department of Education, the Division for Special Education and Supports, and local school districts. Congratulations, Ms. Hill. Ms. Jo Smith. Ms. Smith was elected for the 2018 Georgia Association of Teacher Educators Supervising Teacher of the Year, an annual award sponsored by GATE. This award is given to recognize school-based teacher educators whose teaching and mentoring excellence merit special recognition. Ms. Smith was nominated and supported by Dr. Barbara Benson for her work mentoring pre-service teachers. Her commitment to future teachers is commendable. Ms. Smith was honored at an awards luncheon on October 11th at the GATE annual conference at the Unicoi State Park and Lodge in Helen, Georgia. Ms. Smith currently teaches at Winterville Elementary School. Hillsman FFA winners. Congratulations to our Hillsman FFA students for competing at the National FFA Agri-Science Fair. Students placed first in the state contest in April, and as you all should recall, they moved to the top 12 in August, and winners were announced in Indianapolis, Indiana. Emma McElhannon and Ella Bartgall placed first in the nation. Animal science and the amount of protein in horse feed. Ella Johnson and Tori Raschak placed second in the nation. In the same science category with their project on dog food preference and data on overfeeding and underfeeding dogs in the Athens area. This is truly an amazing accomplishment for Clark County School District, Hillsman Middle School, and these young ladies, and they should be congratulated for their hard work. We're so excited to be able to add national winner to our list of accomplishments for students. The Cedar Show's Players. Cedar Show's play, Whose Life Is It Anyway? A hospital drama that revolves around a quadriplegic fighting to make her own medical decisions, received an overall ranking of superior at the GHSA One Act competition. 2 actors were in the cast were named to the All-Star lineup, and those are Anna Capral and Bamiria Jordan. Is our Clark Central FFA team here tonight? They are great. Clark Central High School FFA. Clark Central High School's Future Farmers of America Agricultural Communications CDE team won second place in the Area 2 competition held at Franklin County High School. Team members are Amanda Ochieng, Coles Ellers, Jordan Butler, and Zalea Grant. They have earned the right to represent Clark Central High School at Area 2 FFA in the State Agricultural Communications CDE, which will be held on the campus of the University of Georgia in March. Congratulations to their team and their advisor, Ms. Jillian Gordon, on this outstanding accomplishment. The Odyssey newspaper and Odyssey magazine. On October 21st, 41 members of the Odyssey Media Group, co-editors of Anna Aldridge and Catherine Grace Upchurch, and the Iliad Literary Art Magazine editors-in-chief Beatrice Aitchison attended the Georgia Scholastic Press Association's Fall Conference. Students presented various sessions, and their publications were recognized for excellence. There's also an article that's linked on our website for those of you who would like to see. But they received a Georgia Scholastic Press Association Staff Award for the 2018 Iliad Literary Art Magazine. The 2018 magazine was rated General Excellence Literary Magazine. They also received a Superior Evaluation in Literary Magazine competition. They scored 115 of 120 possible points. They also participated in Fall Conference on-site competitions. They had Best Design for First Edition competition, Best Cover First Edition competition, Best Overall for First Edition competition, Best Front Page, Best Multimedia. We had students who received individual awards, and those are Elena Gilbertson Hall. She's here. Katie Grace Upchurch, Zoe Patterson, Jordan Ring, Beatrice Aitchison, Violet Merritt, Sydney Gregg and Violet Merritt, Natalie Rips, and Avery Ray. Is Natalie here? All right, thank you, Natalie. Okay, and we have Jordan Butler that just arrived from Clark Central FFA. This concludes our recognitions for tonight. Congratulations to all of our recipients.
so much, Dr. Thomas. And congratulations to all the recipients tonight. And we appreciate all your hard work and congratulate you on the amazing things you're accomplishing. The next item on our agenda is to amend or adopt the agenda that we have before us.
I have one question.
Sure.
And it's all part of the board docs thing. Do we have a possible executive session or not?
We do not have an executive session tonight. And for those of you following along at home, we have some paperwork in the front. We have an online portal for all of our documents that we're discussing tonight, called Board Docs, and you can link to it from the Board of Education page on the Clark County School District website. If you'd like to follow along with all the ins and outs. So, motion on our agenda this evening? Ms. Davis.
I'd like to amend the agenda to remove or to pull policy BBFBC, and consider that in our January meeting, and that back to the policy
Thank you. Sure. Let's see if we get a second on this and then we can discuss it. Thank you, Mr. Davis. So this would be, this is a motion to remove BBFBC from the list of policies that are slated to be posted for public review for 4 weeks. That's the motion. Any questions, concerns? Yes.
I have a question, Bill. Thank you. GB, but
Yes.
if we are talking about that, then we can pull it as well.
Let's
If needed, but.
let's discuss, consider, if you don't mind, the motion that we have.
But that is to take that back to committee, right?
Yes.
Right. And so that's the board community engagement policy.
That's right. That's right.
The discussion on that is just that if it goes back to policy, I don't want to stipulate that it comes to us in January because we don't know that yet. But pulling it off this agenda, that's fine.
And I think there's, first, I think there's been some great engagement on the board and within the public around this policy and around striking the right balance, around engaging with the community, and also being good stewards of our job. And that's a tension that we need to strike the right balance with. And so working on the language, I think there's unanimity in our desire to strike the right balance. And so it's
I'm sorry I misspoke about January, but I thought that was a missed policy meeting, but I do understand that that is not the case, so let's take it back to the news.
Any other questions on this amendment? The agenda?
Also, follow up, I didn't get a chance to look, but I did get some, I'm sorry, I got some input about our policy. I can't remember if this is one that's going out for 30-day review about the first in Georgia religion policy. Is that one up for 30-day review as well? Okay, so good. All right. I have some comments on that too.
And to be clear for those listening, our policy committee meetings, again, are also totally open to the public. We welcome engagement there. This will come up again in a future board meeting to be posted for public review again once we work on the language. So there's plenty more time to engage with the language on this policy. So we have a motion by Ms. Davis to take BBFBC off this agenda, second by Mr. Davis. All in favor? Any opposed? Okay. Move that. Any other amendments to our agenda tonight?
Okay. So we'll discuss, I also had some concerns about GDO, but I guess we'll discuss that when it comes up. Just making sure that we will discuss each of the ones that are remaining in term.
Yeah, that'd be fine, we can do that. Definitely want to hear all concerns. Do we have a motion to adopt the agenda as amended?
I don't know we adopt the agenda.
As amended?
As amended.
Thank you, Mr. Worthy. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Davis. Any questions or concerns? All in favor? Thank you. Any opposed? All right. Next up on our agenda is, we have a section for public comments tonight. And we have an excellent list of people who are excited to talk, and I appreciate you all being here. In terms of the ways we hear from folks, speakers will be limited to 3 timed minutes. At this point, remarks must be concluded. No speaker shall indulge in personal attacks while speaking. This is very important. All comments are to be addressed directly to the Board of Education. To protect the privacy of our students, speakers shall refrain from identifying specific students by name. Personal concerns may be addressed in writing to the superintendent or the president of the Board of Education. And we have 14 folks who've signed up to speak tonight. I have my daughter here to do some quick math, but we're excited to hear from everyone. Our first speaker tonight will be Susan Lane regarding elementary school recess.
Let me begin by saying that the problem I am bringing to you is easy and uncontroversial compared with most of what you're going to be hearing about later. It has a solution that is within your power to implement, and the solution is free. I'm Susan Lane, and my son is a 3rd grader at Timothy Road Elementary School. I went to his conference a couple of weeks ago, and he's fine. And when I was speaking with Mrs. Cook, I asked how much recess he got every day. And she said, on a good day, he gets 12 minutes. And on a bad day, which was twice a week, he only got 8. Now, I know that schools have to balance instructional time with free play time. And I think that we have swung too far in the wrong direction at 8 minutes. I came home and did some research because I'm also a graduate student. And it turns out that children who have recess are more focused. They're more able to control their own impulses, and they have fewer behavior problems. Children who get recess are able to plan and work creatively to solve problems. Children, especially boys, who get recess are better able to do math and language arts tests afterwards. Children who get recess are more likely to be able to cooperate, to form deep friendships, to get along with their peers. Children who get recess are more likely to like school. Children who get recess are less likely to be obese. I asked around, and not only is recess too short with 15 minutes officially required by policy, which we all know is not 15 minutes, but too often, children are deprived of it entirely. Routinely, children who have problems with impulse control and talk out in class, or who can't finish their work on time, are deprived of the very thing that might help. It's a big problem, but there is a solution. We have all the equipment, and it is free. Guaranteed recess of 30 minutes for all pre-K through 5th grade, pre-K through 5th graders in Clark County, with only exceptions for safety. North Carolina can do it. Colorado, Florida, Tennessee all have more generous recess laws than Clark County. There's so much research to back this up. I hope that you go home and Google it yourselves. And I would love to speak to you individually, as that is still allowed as of right now.
Our next commenter will be Melissa Link regarding facilities report, future facilities plan.
Hi there. I'm Melissa Lake. I'm your county commissioner for this particular area, this neighborhood, Hancock Boulevard, Cobble facilities, including this facility, West Broad and Chase Street. I'm addressing the facilities report that y'all discussed at the workshops over the weekend, and I have lots and lots of concerns, but primarily I'm here to extend an invitation. I would like to invite the school board to engage in a conversation with Athens-Clarke County staff, elected officials, and the community in general about the facilities that CCSD maintains and the needs for them and the proposed changes. I'm particularly concerned about West Broad. That facility means a whole lot to my constituents, folks in those surrounding neighborhoods, and to many folks throughout the community. It is quite literally the only place in all of Athens-Clarke County where people of many different backgrounds, many different age groups, many different races can come together in a single social space, and the walls of persistent segregation fall apart. And I really question the needs that have been proposed for that facility. The proposal to completely obliterate the garden and the market, to put in a early learning center and a health center. There are about at least a dozen existing child care facilities within about a mile radius, and there are 2 hospitals, 3 urgent care centers, countless doctor's offices, and a neighborhood health center within about a mile radius of there. I would ask you to reach out to ACC about traffic concerns. We do have a traffic study going on along this corridor right now. It really, really terrifies me to think of 204-year-olds being dropped off and picked up every day by harried parents coming from all directions. That is one of the most dangerous stretches of urban street in all of Clarke County. There's been at least 5 fatalities in the past decade or so. There are a lot of conversations that need to happen in order to consider particularly the changes to this area, not only physical limitations, but social and cultural issues. And I really believe that the community deserves an open conversation about this facility and the programming that's going on there and the general needs of the community. We have a future land use plan. We have a workforce housing study. We have identified areas for future growth and areas where there is need for healthcare facilities, child care facilities. There's almost nothing on the east side and nothing on the farther west side where we have a large population of lower income and working class citizens who really could use these kind of facilities in those areas. Thank you.
Katrina Evans, talking about the use of CCSD funds in various aspects.
Thank you. I'm Katrina Evans. I'm going to jump right into it. Regarding the Chase Street trailers, it is important to be a good neighbor, but I don't think that appeasing one household by spending $50,000 is an appropriate use of funds. Less expensive solutions exist, such as a wall or landscaping, which would be a permanent improvement to benefit the students. Measure the sound now, install the landscaping screener wall, and confirm the noise reduction has been achieved. Perhaps try a less expensive route over Thanksgiving before spending a significant amount on the rotation. Pivoting away from a $50,000 trailer rotation, but staying on efficient use of funds, I'm disheartened to know that CCSD will not fund the site coordinators that Family Connection in Communities and Schools has been providing through a grant the last few years. I realize there are different pots of money, but the focus should be on our return on investment and equity. You mentioned a phrase last week, Dr. Means, leveraging funding to rebalance equity. That's exactly what the full funding of the 5 site coordinators would accomplish. The flagpole recently had an article that celebrated our giant rate increase of graduation in all of our high schools. And a large part of that was due to the one-on-one case management that the site coordinators are working on. They're basically serving as graduation coaches. They take kids on field trips, assist families with bills, dental bills, eyeglasses, but most importantly, they believe in the students. I understand that despite some board support for this funding, you, Dr. Means, have opted not to fund the coordinators. And I'm here tonight to ask you to reconsider. This leverage funding would continue to service 275 high-risk students. If the funding is not secured in less than 6 weeks, the investment that others have made will evaporate, as will our progress. I don't know competition, but getting $200,000 worth of services for $100,000 seems to be the actual definition of leverage funding. And this funding is directly serving minority students that are deeply impacted by poverty. The contradiction on spending $50,000 with ease on something temporary and without student benefit while rejecting the $100,000 needed for the site coordinators, to me, is shameful. The good news is, you can correct this. You can do the right thing before they're gone. Keep them in the schools so we can continue to improve our graduation rates. Lastly, to the board, I appreciate your elected service, which I know is not easy. But please do not approve the policy which you've removed, thankfully, that would serve to disengage you from your constituents. Thank you very much.
Thank you. By way of reminder, all comments need to be directed directly to the Board of Education. Thank you. Our next speaker will be Carrie Bishop.
Hi, my name is Carrie Bishop. I have a third grader at Chase Street, and today I'm speaking on behalf of a concerned group of community members. Due to a growing school population at Chase, we have a large portable building in our playground that houses the entire second grade. This summer, residents in a neighboring house complained that the HVAC units closest to them are too loud. We recently learned that the Clark County School District solution to this complaint is to spend $50,000 to add landscaping and rotate the building 180 degrees so the HVAC units are facing a different direction. We have many questions about this decision. In an email to the Chase Street community, Dr. Means explained that the money will come from a CCSD Plant Services Fund. It was also explained that these funds are not earmarked for instructional services or personnel, but this money surely could be used for other things for CCSD students. How can the school district justify this expense when many schools have other more pressing needs? The Future Facilities Use Report released in November says, quote, "It is evident there are as many disparities related to facilities as there are to academics," end quote. We believe it's the district's duty to put this money towards rectifying those building disparities. According to Dr. Means' email, quote, "The district agreed to the compromise in order to, 1, allow the principal and district plant services staff to focus on other issues directly impacting children, and 2, demonstrate good faith in being a compromising and considerate community partner," end quote. It is unfortunate that a more cost-effective compromise could not be reached with the neighbors. We believe we can be a good community partner and also find a solution that does not cost the school district $50,000. We agree that the district has a responsibility to be a good neighbor to the homes and businesses around them. Even though Chase Street is Property Zone G government, which has 0 requirements for setbacks or other property constraints, several things have already been done to help address the noise complaints. For example, the HVAC units were turned off from 11 p.m. to 6 a.m. Unfortunately, this resulted in mildew growing in the portable classrooms, so industrial-grade dehumidifiers had to be installed to reduce the mildew. Other solutions, such as a landscape buffer or a wall, were also offered to the residents. Chase Street and CCSD staff have already been acting as good neighbors by their diligent attention to this issue. Using $50,000 to rotate a building is simply a misuse of the school district and taxpayers' money, and we have no assurance that it will resolve the issue. Doesn't it make sense to try more affordable solutions first and potentially be able to use this money for improvements that could benefit the students in our district? Even though expenditures under $80,000 require no approval from the school board, we feel that in this situation, alternative solutions should be revisited and carefully considered before this plan is finalized. Thank you.
Next speaker will be Tamara. Correct your name if I did that wrong.
Hi, my name is Tamara Hay, and this is about a policy that's going back to the policy committee, but hopefully my comments will still be relevant in that work. I'm a parent of 2 Clark County students, and I serve as the secretary of CCSD's Parent Advisory Board. I'm here to express my individual views. I'm very concerned about the wording of the proposed school board community engagement policy. Section A, which pertains to school auxiliary organizations, such as the Parent Advisory Board, states, quote, "A majority vote will be taken annually to determine if the board or its designee may meet with the district school auxiliary organizations on a regular and ongoing basis." The wording seems at odds with the role of school board members. The National Association of School Boards states, quote, "The most important responsibility of school boards is to work with their communities to improve student achievement in their local public schools," end quote. Furthermore, the National Association of School Boards states that one of the important roles and responsibilities of community leadership is to model collaboration and trust. Our community faces significant issues of trust when it comes to the Clark County School District. Many community members with a vested interest in Clark County schools have publicly expressed concerns of a lack of transparency. Approving this policy as currently worded would likely increase those concerns in the community and would certainly increase my personal concerns about transparency. Any policy that gives the board the power to restrict a board member's participation with school auxiliary organizations or other organizations is not in the best interest of the community and carries the potential to further erode trust between the community and the school district. If restricting board members' community engagement is not the intent of this policy, it needs to be rewritten. If the aim is to enhance transparency and communication among school board members, the policy needs to be rewritten to clearly communicate that aim. Part of Section C of the proposed policy states, if a board member attends a meeting or an event, the member will, 1, clarify that the member is there as an individual, and 2, the member will report back necessary information to the full board via an email recap. I propose that this portion of the policy is all that is needed should a measure for greater transparency among board members be warranted. It could apply to school auxiliary organizations, stakeholder groups, and community meetings and events. During these fraught times in our country and in our community, building trust is of paramount importance. Any policy that can potentially restrict elected officials from attending school auxiliary meetings or stakeholder meetings is at odds with the need in our community for greater trust and transparency. While the intent of this policy may or may not be restricting access to school board members, it can easily be interpreted that way. Therefore, regardless of the intent of this policy, it carries the potential impact of making community members such as myself feel less trustful of the school board. Therefore, I urge you not to approve of this policy in its current form. Thank you.
The next speaker will be Karen Giroux.
I was browsing through social media the other night and I saw that Chase and Burrow won some awards. Excellent job. I was glad to see such a positive coda to Dr. Kurtz's tenure in CCSD. I also saw students from both high schools voting for the first time, and that was truly inspiring. But I also saw a request to fill the food pantries at school on Facebook. I saw a request for a class set of umbrellas because kids aren't able to get to band class when it rains unless they have umbrellas. Another one for help fixing up the uniform closet at school for an estimated cost of $250. And I know that in the spring I'll be contributing to every overnight field trip GoFundMe page, just as I did last year and the year before that. If you have millions of dollars for Abbott and UVA, then why is the school depending on donations before their kids can attend band class? If we can pay $50,000 to turn trailers 180 degrees, surely plant services can find $250 to build a uniform closet. If you can spend thousands to fly every teacher to Abbott training, surely you can supplement overnight field trips for students. If my millage rate is going to be on the maximum for the billionth straight year, and on top of that I see budgets that seem to treat SPLOST as a guaranteed source of income, I have to wonder why I have spent $300 of my own money to supply stadium seats for an ESL class. They needed stadium seats not for an outdoor classroom project, but because they met in a closet, and no desks could fit in that closet. I didn't really have an extra $300 lying around, but I couldn't stand the idea that kids who are speakers of other languages, with probably the most disenfranchised group of parents in the district, had to sit on the floor of a closet in order to get an education. But we have $400,000 for corporate consultants. At the very time we see our tax dollars being spent on corporate influences in education, we also see trying to limit our access to you, our elected officials. We elected individuals, not a collective voice. I believe the results of the recent election confirm this. The people Clark County elected as representatives have strong opinions and are people very familiar with the schools they serve. I don't understand what gives this board the right to determine how and when and why they communicate with their constituents, and I truly don't even understand why you as public servants would want such a thing. Speaking of representation, how is District 2 represented? I understand Mr. Payne has served on the district for 40 years, is ill, and has been unable to attend meetings for many months. Is there a policy in place that provides guidance for replacing a board member when an illness necessitates an extended absence? If there is no such policy, what's the timeline for creating one? And will someone be elected or appointed to serve in the interim? Most importantly, how is the lack of representation for District 2 in keeping with the district's equity plan? You're a board of 9, one of whom can't participate and 3 of whom are lame ducks. That leaves just 5 of the intended 9 representatives to make decisions on matters as important as rezoning, displacing West Broad, and limiting access to constituents. You owe it to the people of Clark County to put the brakes on these processes until you have a full and effective board.
Thank you. Judith Johnston. Is Judith Johnston here? Then moving on, we will hear from Jesse Evans.
I think it's going to be the social, or sorry, the community engagement, but no way.
Okay, thank you. Our next speaker will be Corinna Gallagher.
I'm hoping that the community will see more of the school board in schools and the community, or their community meetings as Brownsboro efforts improve community engagement in those same areas. Teen Pregnancy Prevention Task Force, Family Connection Community in Schools, Athens Housing Authority Resident Advisory Board, Intercommunity Council, Healthy Families Advisory Board, the Vision Committee, DFACS, Action Incorporated, Athens Land Trust, LSGT Advisory Board, LSGT for WR Pool, Parent Advisory Board, Bethel Midtown Village Stakeholder Committee, Georgia Clients Council, and Athens Resource Center for the Homeless. In the almost 20 boards I have ever served on, I've never heard anyone ask me to declare my whereabouts or worry about what I was going to say when I went somewhere else. The statement, parents don't fail, students don't fail, teachers don't fail, systems fail, encourages the community to blame the system for our failures. We need to do a better job. As a taxpayer in District 2, I expect representation. As a community, we have to do a better job when people are hired or elected to serve us. We must inform newcomers of our successes, our opportunities, and desires, not our weaknesses, false accusations of prior administration or public officials, or present depressing data that does not accurately represent our students, our district, our community, or our future. Newly hired individuals will result to what they know, even if that means working in opposition to what we think is best for our community. We got exactly what we deserve. We have to take some responsibility and hold ourselves accountable for the decisions that we make or not when it comes to the children and the future of this community. Thank you.
Our next speaker will be Malachi Gallagher.
Hello, I'm Malachi Gallagher. I'm a 9th grader at Cedar Shoals Middle School. High school. I would like to talk about 2 points. The first is our school lunch. I think school lunch should be handled with care, because the way that it's made feels like it's just thrown in the microwave and given to us. And it's not really healthy for you to just put food in the microwave and give it to us. And then kids don't eat it. We go around school rationing for something somebody else had. Say you have half a bag of hot Cheetos. Can I get some? don't get me wrong, I'll eat anything but school lunch. And adults don't have to deal with this food because, they're adults that can go buy something while we can't. Either they need to change school lunch or make it easier for us to go purchase lunch somewhere else without it being a big hassle. And with this in place, students wouldn't have to go around school being hungry, which makes them feel angry and they have low energy, so they can't participate in class the way they need to be. My other point is the youth having a voice in the decision-making processes. Decisions in school involve students so much, but the decisions that they make don't involve us. We don't have a voice in it. And if we had a voice, we would have we'll have like more of a feeling of self-power, like we know we have a voice, instead of kids feel like, oh, the adults just gonna make the decisions for us, and later in life when they grow up and they don't feel, when they grow up, they're gonna feel like somebody else needs to make this decision for me, because when I was little, when I was a kid, I had no say in everything. And I think this is ludicrous, because us kids, I think if something's about us, we should have a voice in it, because if we all make a rule that doesn't fit the students well enough, we can't tell you because we don't have a voice. And most things being taught in school aren't going to be used again, so why can't we have this sense of self-empowerment that is going to last us forever? Thank you.
Hello, Brent Andrews here. When I first started attending school board meetings a few years ago, I felt as if I was intruding on a private party. Since that time, attendance at school board meetings has grown enough to move into this larger space, and many people who are unable to attend now watch live streaming or videos of meetings at home. Stakeholders frequently engage in conversations about how to improve educational experiences for our students on social media forums, and more people are aware of policy discussions than any other time in my experience as a teacher. Although disproportionality according to race can be a challenging conversation for the general public, it's the most important conversation this school district must engage in. Never before have I witnessed so many people willing to not only acknowledge the disparities in educational opportunities among racial groups, but also immerse themselves in seeking solutions to barriers and providing quality education for all CCSD students. The last few years have also seen the return of the Teacher Advisory Board, appointment of more teachers to district committees, and more teacher engagement with policy discussions. Not only have I personally become more active in seeking to improve community problems, I frequently see current school board members, district administrators, and local elected officials at community meetings and events aimed at supporting immigrant families, protecting local governance and funding for public education, demanding better health care for those with low income, and demanding that all citizens of Athens be treated with quality and dignity. These are all positive steps that our district should seek to deepen, but I'm concerned that recent suggested policies could undermine community engagement and upset what I've heard referred to as balanced government. Proposed policy BBFBC seems to be aimed at limiting the ability of school board members to engage with community events, community meetings, and community groups. One of the greatest strengths of this community is the deep commitment many people feel towards devoting their personal time to the betterment of the community. School board members are first and foremost individuals who should be engaged in community outreach. As elected leaders, it is not only their right but their duty to demonstrate that they understand the multitude of issues facing residents of CCSD and that they're committed to removing any and all barriers to excellent educational experiences which prepare every CCSD student to reach his or her goals in life. As MSGTs or community-based leadership teams of diverse stakeholders, I hope that our district seeks to empower these groups rather than limit their purview. For reasons of maintaining a proper balance of government, I also hope the school board decides not to approve proposed policy GBO, which would transfer power to approve and deny professional resignations from the school board to the superintendent. Government is healthiest when there is a strong system of checks and balances in place, and when elected leaders are thoroughly invested in their duties and commitments to the community. For many years, the school board was viewed as nothing more than a rubber stamp mechanism. We've come too far as a district to undermine the progress we've made. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker will be Curtis Downs.
Good evening. I'm here to talk about some of the things I observed at the retreat the other day, and I got new respect for y'all with what you do on a daily, weekly, hourly basis in your duties, the district and the school board. But I have a couple brief points on the site planning facilities expansion of the CCSD. I commend the district leadership for expanding access to early childhood education through the Office of Early Learning and committing to a model of school-based health centers to supplement the work of our school nurses. Everyone I know supports that. I don't think anybody in the room would disagree. I certainly do. I disagree that in order to make this happen, the West Broad site needs a massive rethinking. The restoration of the historic school makes perfect sense, the way it's envisioned with a parent resource center and Museum of Athens Education History. To say the garden must be moved and the other buildings raised in order to expand early childhood and health clinic services seems to me to be a false choice. Consider some alternatives if you wanted to expanding the Office of Early Learning to a similarly sized facility on the east side. That right there would seem to me to alleviate the issues of crowding with only one center right here in the middle of town or slightly on the west side. And it seems like a school-based health clinic would perhaps be found, a good location to be found really close to here, something we all drive on most every day. In the large parcel owned by the district, fronting on Baxter Street in between Elks Road Elementary and Clark Middle Schools. I was just driving it today, looking over there. It occurred to me a few days ago, what a big expanse of land that is. It seems like that might be even better in terms of parking, access, and it would also be school-based as opposed to not school-based for a school-based health center. And maybe even have a counterpart on the east side of the old Gaines campus, which you're already talking about putting various buildings on. So to have a west side and east side school-based health center closer to schools might really be an advantage. Those simple changes would mean the expansion of the district's early learning and health clinic capacities, but would not require the wholesale change of character that losing the garden at West Broad would entail. So why is it important that the garden stay where it is as opposed to moving to the school-based sites that have been suggested? Location, neighborhood, community involvement. In the last several years, the various partners that have made the West Broad Market Garden such a success are tied directly to the surrounding residents and neighborhood, where the garden is more than just a garden. The same way our children receive an education in our schools, both inside and outside the classroom. The garden is really a vehicle for multiple community benefits beyond the garden itself. Community development, economic activity, entrepreneurship, neighborhood identity and pride, and significant involvement with students learning in the Young Urban Farmers and Young Urban Builders programs. Obviously, they need to meet standards, but surely the expansion of CCSD's early childhood and health clinics cannot really come down to this one tiny parcel of land unless you want it to.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Stephanie Flores here. Sorry, Mr. Evans, you talked about moving on. Would you like to do your comments now? Okay. Thanks.
When I was listening to some of the speakers earlier, I felt compelled to speak on District 2 representation. We've been without representation for District 2 for over half a year, basically. We have a history in this community of not serving Black youth the way we should be in this community, particularly Black youth living in poverty. If you look at District 2, there's a great map. I suggest you go check it out, racial.map, Google it. And then you can look at District 2. And Mr. Payne's district is predominantly African American. And you can see that the Nullabee affordable housing community is right there as well. And we've been going for over half a year without representation for the students and families that I serve as a teacher at Cedar Shores High School. And to me, as someone who serves on our board for Athens Park County Board of Elections, as somebody who's very passionate about government and civics, as somebody who's very passionate about racial justice and social justice and equity in our system, I find that unacceptable. I'm under the impression there's not a policy in place to replace Mr. Payne, but I'm also under the impression that that's well within the purview of the Board of Education to create. And I hope that the students and families that need representation, they need an advocate, they need a champion on this board, will not have to go very much longer without representation on this board. Thank you.
The Toronto Madness.
The board and Dr. Bean. Well, basically, I'm going to change my comments a little bit. They were truly geared towards the communication policy, and I want to say thank you for one, at least waiting until January, because I felt that that policy that decision being made before new board members had a chance to be seated with you all was very unfair to, especially board members like myself. I'm a community activist. I'm an advocate. I don't apologize for that. And I feel that we should not we should be one of inclusion. And we're all not going to be the same, we're not all going to do the same things, but we are one community. And that's what I want to see on this board. That's what I want to see in this community, is that we embrace all people. And the decisions that we make, even some of the other areas that you all are voting on tonight, your voice, it speaks highly to your commitment to our community. So I say, do think about the people in your community, the voices that have spoken to you about all of these issues that are on the table for tonight. Because together we can be greater. And that's why I joined this board, because I didn't see that. So I stepped up because I am one that my role is to support and be an allegiance to the community. And I feel that first and foremost, that's what all of our roles should be. Sure, we are supposed to be about governance, but how can we be about governance if we are not touching the pulse, do not understand what's going on in the schools, do not understand what's going on in our neighborhoods? We cannot make adequate decisions. And that's what I saw with that previous administration, and things have to change. We have to be a true voice, a true steward to our community. Thank you.
Thank you for all speakers tonight. You've raised some fantastic issues. I would very quickly just encourage you to engage with the board, talk to us. This will always and forever be your ability to engage with members of the Board of Education. And I would encourage you to seek out information on the nuances of the items that you've raised and have that conversation, and also to understand the role of the board in each of these issues, because we have distinct roles to do. I'd also encourage you to reach out to Dr. Means and his staff, who always are willing to engage with lots and lots of issues. So thank you for being here and sharing these your thoughts tonight. The next item on our agenda, we have a number of information items that are posted on board docs and available for your review. We received a Early Head Start Policy Council report. We received a SPLOSH report, Athens Community Career Academy report, and the Parent Advisory Board report. And those are available for your review and information that we touched on briefly during our work session.
Can I just make a comment?
Please.
In a couple of days. First of all, I was really glad to see the Parent Advisory Board report to the board, and I think that's valuable information and helps us know the issues of concern in that board, and appreciate all that. And again, as I did last week, I want to acknowledge that C.J. Amison, that serves on the board of the Career Academy, is here with us tonight, and they're having one of their board members attend all of our meetings, and we appreciate their presence. And if you don't mind, I would like to take some personal privilege to say something to Lee Sharon, because on Monday I went to the induction of the new members to the Georgia Writers Hall of Fame, and his sister was inducted. And I just want to say how proud I was of her and the stories that you tell in your support of her throughout her childhood. So I just want everyone to know that was a great induction ceremony. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Williams. Item F on our agenda now is community reports. First being the Finance Committee.
I don't have
Okay. And I believe our next Finance Committee meeting is 15th, is that correct? November 15th. Thank you. The Government Relations Committee.
Yes, we have, what we've been working on has been our legislative agenda, and that is something that we will bring before the board later on this meeting. And, really, again, appreciate the efforts of Clara Suggs that's helping us work on that agenda, and we will meet later on this month. We're still working on the agenda for that meeting.
Thank you. Next, we have the Policy Committee.
So the policy committee meeting will be in December. We won't have one this month for lack of a quorum. As I understand, so I think our next meeting is now scheduled for December 10th. And the policies, just move forward to that space, the 30 days stays to 30 days. So those policies that will be effective in 30 days will vote on our December meeting. And then the next meeting again will be, our next policy committee meeting will not be until after that board meeting. So yes, that's when we'll have our next policy committee meeting. A couple of policies that were maybe noteworthy, we have the BBFA, the local school governance team review policy, and some comments about that. Simply, it's not changing anything, it's not taking anything away from the local school governance teams, but essentially it's just making a statement about the purpose of the local school governance teams. Then also policy GBO, professional personnel resignation, that's up for revision. Again, the changes recommended here are to be employee friendly, so definitely take a closer look at those, at that policy, make sure we're on with that. We talked about the board community engagement policy. We already have some suggested revisions to that. So I'm looking forward to that coming back to the policy committee for us to further explore that policy, make sure that we are being equitable. Commit ourselves to the organization's needs.
Thank you. And finally, we have the Property Committee. I believe we're missing both the chair and the co-chair today. As a member of the committee, I'll briefly say that we met and discussed ways to properties to expand the Career Academy and what the Career Academy is offering. And that's one item. And then obviously we have the big facilities report, which we imagine will have some property committee implications down the road.
Remember that property committee, let me again thank our district, thank Dr. Means and the staff. This was an awesome report. The 2-day retreat was long. It was very detailed, but I didn't walk away with questions. I really actually understand the vision that we have now. And I look forward to us fleshing that out to see if we are able to do the things that we think are going to help move our needle in something.
And if anybody is curious, that facilities report can be found also on board docs. Yes, Greg.
Yes, I do want to raise the fact, and I believe that Dr. Means is working on this, but we had promised the community that they could propose questions and that we would provide answers to those questions dealing with the facility report. And I think that we kind of maybe we overstated when we could do that. We stated that we would do it last Monday. And so we still, as of this point, as far as I know, we haven't done it yet. So I think that just letting the community know that we are accepting questions and of the facility report, and very willing to provide answers to those questions at some point.
That's right. Dr. Means, do you have anything to add to that question and answer process?
I'm sorry, Mr. Biden, what was your question?
Do you have anything to add to the process for posting questions and getting them answered regarding the facilities report?
Let me start by saying I'm very proud of the fact that our team accepted questions. That was a new process for us. And it allowed citizens who were observing the process to weigh in. So let me start there. I'm thankful to our team for answering these questions. We'll have all the questions posted on our website tomorrow. So. But again, I think I'm just pleased with the fact that there was a level of engagement that we were able to honor. And it wasn't just simply, so often you hear from community members, they'll say, well, you're just expecting us to watch the board engage, and we can't ask any questions during the process. That actually, we found a way to allow people to weigh in and to present their questions. And so what we tried to do, and for the most part, we answered most of them during the weekend. There were some financial questions that took some time for our SPLOS team and others to gather, but we'll have it all posted by tomorrow on the website.
Thank you.
So what's up? How many questions did we end up with?
I think it was over 40 questions that we went through.
And for those who weren't able to make it out last weekend, we had about 4 hours on Friday night, about 4 hours on Saturday morning, and some of the staff were here late in the night to make all that stuff up. So we really appreciate the effort to do all that again.
Just one additional point, and thank you, Dr. Means, for that. Is it possible to, and I guess I address this to Jared, is it possible for the community to still ask questions of board members as to the facility report?
I would say always and forever, community members can ask board members questions about all the things before the board.
Okay, so this is an ongoing process.
Ongoing, ongoing. Please engage with us around all things that are before the board. We'd love to talk through them. Ms. Williams.
Just some clarity on when the board is going to drill down on some of the things in the report. What is the schedule for that?
I'm recalling we have, Dr. Means will make a recommendation to us in our December meeting around engaging with an architecture firm. That's sort of the first things that the board will be able to take action on. Vote on spending money to engage with an architecture firm. That will be, we anticipate that recommendation in our next meeting in December.
And there are a lot of other parts to the
Yes.
too, so.
It's a long, again, I encourage you to check out the facilities report. In the facilities report, I think their staff did a great job of lining up the schedule, when the things will come up, what exactly is coming up, and what we anticipate the recommendation to be. And that's the way for the board to anticipate those questions and those votes. That's on page
15, I think.
15, 14, something like that.
Well, maybe 14, but I think it's 15. Yeah.
So what is it, 15? Thank you. Moving on in our agenda, we have item G, board community committees. So these are, again, our committees that are out in the public. These are many of them are stakeholder committees where members of the board sit and have represent the board in meetings, committees. And so we'd like to hear a report first from the Athens Area Community Foundation.
Actually, we'll be meeting, I believe, next week, or did I miss it? I don't either. There's a meeting coming up, but the reason the meeting is important, I will get with, I guess, the president, because I don't know the process of a board being appointed to the committee. I will be coming off in December. So I will find out what the process is so we can continue our partnership and relationship on the board. I've served since the beginning, so that's why there was never a process in place. But I'll find out and be ready to present that to you.
Thank you. The Community Oversight Committee is a committee that I get to sit on, and we meet and review the SPLOST expenditures, all the projects we have going on. Obviously, we have a big project going on at Hillsman, currently well underway, and several other projects. We also have a project, a cosmetology lab here for the Career Academy that will be open in the new year. And that committee also had a special meeting and met to discuss the future facilities report, as it has several implications for spending both existing and future SPLOST dollars. So that was a good meeting. Yes.
Just a couple of questions, Jerry, about that. One is the expansion of, because you alluded to it earlier, the expansion of the Career Academy, potentially, into other properties. Is that something that would come out of SPLOST dollars, or does that come out of the general revenue, or do we have another budget for that? Is that something that's been on the discussion with the COC or not?
It is, as far as, it has not been part of the COC conversation, as far as I recall. It has been part of the property committee conversation. Is that?
Mr. Bobby, I can answer.
Please.
Answer. The purchase of the property would likely come from Fund 101, which is a fund that the district has that's primarily focused on buildings and grounds and purchasing or recouping the funds from sell facilities. So for example, last year when we sold Barber Street School, the proceeds went into that fund. So that's where the funds would come from to make the purchase. There has been a lot of conversation, and we'll continue to have a conversation with our business partners in the community who have expressed initial interest in partnering with the Career Academy and actually even paying for a portion of what we call in the construction world, the furniture, fixtures, and equipment, or FF&E. So in terms of actually outfitting the facility, we're hopeful that a portion or all of that outfitting of the facility could be privately donated. We're not sure yet. You were part of the visit that many community members recently took to Newnan, Georgia, to look at how that community is rallying around career, technical, and agricultural education. And one of the components that we saw was that the business community has really stepped forward and paid for certain learning labs, like the one that the Career Academy is pursuing. So the first component is the purchase of the property. It comes from Fund 101, the actual outfitting of the facility. Well, we want to lean on our corporate partners because, candidly, this is what we learned from that trip. We have to listen to our business partners and figure out what they need in their future workforce. It shouldn't be about what the district or the Career Academy wants to drive in terms of a career path.
Just kind of a little bit of a follow-up there. Do you, Dr. Mings, do you know about how much money we've got in the Fund 101 total?
2.8 million.
And this question is again, addressed to our president. In terms of, on the minutes of the Oversight Committee, it talks about a balance of 65.5 million. Is that, what is left, what is budgeted out of that left? I mean, I'm just trying to get a sense of what we spent on what and what we have yet to spend on what.
And those are sort of splosh dollars, and what we can do is perhaps offline with Mr. Gerald Ascott, I believe can give us a good accounting of what's been spent on what. So perhaps we can request that and have that emailed around.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'd like to hear from the Envision Athens Committee.
So I haven't been able to attend the last meeting of the Implementation Oversight Committee because of conflict with my schedule, but I'll be able to start going to those again next month, I believe. So I did receive the notes of the agenda for that meeting. The primary thing that Envision Athens did as an oversight committee was to do a budget alignment. We were not on the same fiscal calendar as the county, and they tend to be the heavy funders. It doesn't impact any of the work that we're doing. It's just an alignment of making sure that the contracts that we have with our implementation team is going to be there to kind of match calendar year fiscally for that project going forward. It is still a 2-year initiative. That hasn't changed. I do know that we are working on a dashboard where we can actually track the progress on the different initiatives for Envision Athens. And I didn't get the minutes yet, but I imagine that will be unveiled, if not by December, certainly in the first quarter. And also in the first quarter, we will do the evaluation of the process, because it's the first time that we've actually had an initiative where we have the county, the school system, private enterprise, and certainly special interest groups all engaged to try and make these initiatives happen. So we wanted to evaluate our approach to doing that to make sure that we don't have some opportunities for improvement and further collaboration and further engagement. So that'll be done in the first quarter of next year.
Thank you, Ms. Davis. Yes.
Yeah, this is a quick question.
You'd like to.
One quick question to our representative. Linda, what's the budget in terms of Envision Athens? Is there any more contributions that are coming down the pipe from the school board, or none has been talked about? It's self-sustaining?
Our commitment as a funding member for that initiative is still the same $15,000 a year for 2 years. So no one's asked for additional funds, and we have not yet approached any of the funding partners to extend that beyond the 2 years. So the community and the committee has to show some response, some progress before we can even begin to ask that question before. Now, the initiatives and things that are happening, I think there's a very active Educate Athens committee that I think you've been to meetings with them or been a part of those meetings. And so the things that are happening in our school system are things that we would find ourselves anyway. So we think that would be a part of our strategic plan that we would implement. The same thing would happen in the health field. And those are the two that I kind of pay closer to.
So are we in our second year, our second 15, or in our first $15,000 commitment?
We're your first $15,000 commitment.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. The Foundation for Excellence in Public Education.
Thank you. I'm the board representative to the Foundation for Excellence, and I encourage people on board and otherwise to go see the photos that are on their website, athensffe.org, from the 2018 awards ceremony. It was a packed house at the Georgian Ballroom, and many people were awarded prizes and awards throughout the community, because that's what FFE does. It recognizes excellence throughout, both staff as well as students and faculty, and it was a great time for all. So I'm very privileged to be able to serve on the FFE board. Thank you for that privilege.
Thank you. I agree. It's an incredible event. You get the opportunity to go next year. That's a great one to go to. Moving on to item H, the minutes of previous meetings. I believe we have yet to receive minutes for our work session. Sorry. Did you skip the first? I did skip. Yes, I did. My humble apologies.
I just want to bring it to your attention.
My humble apologies, Ms. Thornton. Yes, Georgia School Board Association report. Sorry.
Again, coming to the end of my tenure, I did promise to give a narrative or structure on the delegate and that whole process. I will have that for you by next month or to the, because I think you're probably going to have to develop a policy. So we won't have all that confusion and misinformation, who serves on what. And you can be better prepared on when the recommendations, legislative recommendations, we always miss that, we're always behind. So I'll have that next month to present.
Thank you. Sounds like a good commitment to not leave the board until that is in. Is that what I'm hearing?
I'm staying until it's in.
I know we have put a lot of work into figuring out all the intricacies and dates and committees, so we appreciate you putting that together for us. And now, item H, minutes of previous meetings. And I think we have yet to receive minutes from our October 4th work session. We have a couple of presentations on there, but not the minutes yet, is that right?
Mr. Bybee, we're waiting on clarification and clear answers around our after-school programming and our 21st century programming. The board posed a number of different questions to staff around those two items, and just we want to make sure that those questions are answered within the minutes and answered appropriately, because that's the living record of the organization. And to date, we haven't received answers that are sufficient to not only answer the questions of the board, but I think for perpetuity's sake, anyone that will go back.
Thank you. Thank you for keeping that delivered care. Yes, Mr. Davis.
Yeah, this question is addressed with the Dr. Means. In terms of, I know that the after-school programming is something that you were going to officially revisit with us in June. I'm just, is there going to be any updates prior to then? I mean, I'm just, because that's a long period of time, and again, I'm kind of building off the concerns with it you have, as well as I do. I mean, I think many of us share the same concerns. So I didn't know if, I just hate to not talk about it until June, but at the same time, I understand that you need time to come up with proposals and that type of thing. So I do understand that. I just hate to have it off the table for that long a period at the same time.
I don't think it's so much proposals or anything else. It's really structuring a framework for us to look at that work differently. And that's why, candidly, it's been a journey to answer the questions, the really good questions that the board posed to staff. How we look at after-school programming in our 21st century programming also fits in with our community schools approach. And so making sure that we're doing good work and defining what we want community schools to look like in our community, and based on school needs, all that takes time for us to kind of put it together. In short, what you heard at the presentation in October, what I had a chance to signal to the community and to the board last year, that we could be more deliberate and intentional about what we offer in those areas, and we want to come back to you with a framework of the way we can measure this, so we can do a better job of serving kids from a wraparound services standpoint.
Thank you.
Is it fair to say that we're just continuing to make progress at the same time that we're doing? I mean, you're making changes.
Your request for an update in that Waiting until June is a long time. I understand, I hear you. And please let me work with staff to find a way where we can give you at least a preliminary update before June. That's fair.
Thank you. Any question about the minutes?
And I know that we had the presentation in here that was made, but can you send us the questions? Because I don't.
Absolutely.
We didn't get a copy of the questions that were asked. I'd like to compare those to the presentation.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And just for the record, what happened was you asked a lot of good questions. Ms. Vodka did an amazing job in capturing those questions in the minutes. And so that's what's happening right now. You asked good questions, and from our perspective, we have an obligation to make sure that we capture those questions and responses appropriately in the minutes. So we'll send you what we currently have in terms of questions, and you'll see why maybe this is somewhat of a delay in terms of getting you answers.
Yes.
And a follow-up question on that, because I can't tell when the minutes are going to be received. Is there a way that we can just get the minutes of that meeting and have the questions in there, and then when we have the amended minutes, you can come back and bring them to the board? Otherwise, this is going to be a huge vacant space
Yes, ma'am.
to refer to.
We can provide you just as if you all understand that they're preliminary minutes and that your questions are identified, but the responses are not.
Right,
We can absolutely provide that to you. Yes, ma'am.
And I think that would be appropriate for the December meeting.
Yes.
So we just have that question.
Yeah, perhaps so if all the responses aren't quite ready, we'll do preliminary minutes for December.
Yes, ma'am.
Questions are there.
Yes, sir.
That's right. Great, thank you. We did receive minutes from our regular meeting on October 11th. Any questions or about those minutes? Is there a motion to approve them? Thank you, Mr. Davis. Is there a second? Second by Mr. Worthy. All in favor of approving the minutes from our regular meeting October 11th? Be opposed? Thank you. And the next item on our agenda is financial reports, and would you like to give us sort of an update of where we are with our financials?
Mr. Hamill is in the midst of moving our budget into what we call Fund 150 approach of budgeting, and that is a way where you can blend both your Fund 100, which is your general budget, and your title funds together. It's a new flexibility that the state of Georgia has been given, and it allows you to truly flex your title funds, because there's a lot of stipulations and rules around what you can and cannot spend when it comes to title dollars. Those rules go away with Fund 150. I've asked Mr. Hamill to develop just a primer, an overview of what Fund 150 is for the board, and he's working on that document. He's currently at a workshop all this week, and that's why he's not here to provide a financial report this month. But in December, you will receive that primer, and it's our goal to then upload that primer to the district website. So it's just not a document for the board's sake, but for the community, so you can understand how we can leverage this funds. It's important to note that we're a Title I district, so there's a significant amount of funds that's available to our building principals. And traditionally, what we've done in this county is that we allow building principals to control and to have a vision for their allocation. There's obviously a district allocation of title funds as well. But that's where things have been delayed for this training.
We look forward to that conversation. Yes, Ms. Williams.
Is that all title funds?
So you're able to win both your title funds, all your title funds.
All
Yes.
titles?
Well, Title I.
Just
Title
for
I.
clarity.
But there are opportunities for us to win other title dollars as well. So Title II or Title III. Title I is where you can use funds to support academic efforts of children. Title II is primarily for professional development. And then there are other titles that the federal government, this is federal dollars. And so there are other federal dollars that we're able to blend in. There's also a new component to this, approach to budgeting that the state of Georgia has provided, where you can blend your special education dollars in with your title, with your Fund 100 dollars. Because the way that the federal government and the state government has traditionally viewed either the use of Title I dollars or special education dollars, that is very segmented and segregated. And we know that there are kids who have special education needs, who are in Title I schools, who are also in a general education environment. And so the ability for us to win those funds versus saying, well, you can only use those dollars for certain kids in certain areas, it provides a lot of flexibility to principals and directors of special education.
Great. And so it sounds like in December, our December meeting, we'll hear a good discussion of this Fund 150 and be able to dive deep into that.
Mr. Hamels will be here to provide that for.
And other financials, we are planning on our November 15th Finance Committee meeting, which again, the public is welcome to attend if you want to, the financials as soon as possible.
Just for clarity too, I know there was some pilot programs throughout the state on blending that, so now is it a blanket that anyone in the state can do?
No, that's a great point. Thank you, Ms. Williams. We are part of cohort 3. So there is a cohort of school districts who were the first to blend their general fund dollars and their Title I dollars. Last year was cohort 2, and upon my arrival and meeting with the Department of Education representatives, they said, oh, and by the way, we're always looking for school districts who want to be part of cohort 3 of using Title I dollars and general fund dollars. And we jumped at the opportunity. I want to thank Mr. Hamill, because while I was excited about joining cohort 3, this is a lot of heavy lifting, because you have to identify which code people were previously paid in, either general funds or title funds, and then you have to find a mechanism or a financial platform where you then say, this is where they were paid previously, now we're putting them in a general pot. It's not as easy as it sounds. There's a lot of accounting that's associated with it, and Mr. Hamill has done a nice job making that transition. So it's one of those projects, Ms. Williams, that while the superintendent of the board may say this is really advantageous for our kids, and it will be, and it is. There's someone else who's doing a lot of hard work to make it happen, and so Mr. Hamill and his team, they deserve a lot of credit for making the shift.
Fantastic. Thank you.
I do have one question for Dr. Means. So is the partnership with UVA, is that kind of a sense of where we could go with this kind of flexibility? Is that supposed to be from Title I?
No.
Okay.
I think the proposal to pay for that potential partnership with the University of Virginia would exist if we were doing fundraising.
We'll have an opportunity later on the agenda to dive deep into the particulars of that. You have a question, we're on, what is not our financial report, but do you have a question around?
It's on the financial report.
Okay.
Okay, and what Dr. Means said in relationship to it. I just want to say that, in terms of this, bringing the Title I and maybe even the special education dollars in the general fund, I went to the National School Board Association workshop on that, and a lot of school districts and a lot of states are way ahead of us in that regard. And for board members who've not been in the classroom, I just want to give you an example of the difficulty difficulty by not being able to do this. In other words, you know, you have equipment that was bought by special ed funds that cannot be used in the classroom for students because it has another funding source. Is just a very, greatly hinders what a school can do in terms of utilizing the equipment and maybe even the staff. So I think this lending the funds in, you know, I'm just so happy that we're heading in this direction. And to me, it's long overdue for the state of Georgia.
Thank you. Moving on to, in our agenda to item J, policy. We have a number of policies that our great policy committee and Dr. Myers have been working on. And there's a list that are proposed to be posted for public review. So all of our policies that come through the policy committee and recommended to the board, we vote now to send these out for public input and comment. So this is, they stay out for public comment for 4 weeks before they are finally adopted. And so we'll go through this list of policies, and at the end there'll be a recommendation to post them for public review. The first policy is ICKA, religious beliefs, which is a new policy. Any questions, comments around that one?
My comments are that I did receive some, I actually sent it to the board, I think I sent it to Dr. Dean, really good insight from the district in North Carolina that implemented a similar policy. And I didn't get to do a crosswalk to make sure that we were point for point with what they were doing. But I would ask the board to take a look at that handout because it was a very specific board policy. It also had the division of how do you determine when you are in that role representing the state laws on religion and education, and also when you are just a regular person exercising your individual freedom in terms of your religion and faith. So what I really like about it is how they just walked it out one-on-one with anecdotes and everything. Great little training video that I thought was really impressive. So maybe if we could take a look at that to see if we can do any more, if we need to do more to our own policy. I really appreciate that. I like our policy as we have it. Obviously, we do a good job, and Don, thank you guys for doing the research on that. But I just really, I don't know if I should send it to me, but I'm glad we got it. And I don't know if we can use the video, but if we can, just get that plus and not say North Carolina. I think we're in really good shape. So, yeah, I think that's a good policy.
Yes.
Let me say something in conjunction with what Ms. Davis said, and I did take a look at that, you know, having been a high school principal, and I think that most of you, hopefully, you're aware of the fact that in that particular law, students have always had a leeway in religious belief. To give you an example, as a principal, I couldn't go on the intercom and start the day with a prayer. But if a student led, they can do it. At an athletic event, they can do it. And I think it's a good policy because we have many students that are members of different religious beliefs, etc., whatnot. And of course, if it's a holiday, and then of course, if they take that holiday or travel someplace, come back, they should be allowed to make up their work.
Thank you. I realize I'm committing some Robert's Rules and discretions here. So is it the preference of the board? We could do one of two things, because I know there's some concerns around some discussion we'd like to have around GBO. We can take a motion in a second to put all these policies out and then discuss, and if somebody would like to make an amendment to that motion, that's one option. Or if you'd like, we can go policy by policy and have a motion in a second, put each one out individually for public review.
I move that we place these policies out for public review for weeks.
Let me read through them, and then so make sure we're all on the same page about what we're talking about, and then that'll open up the floor to be able to have that discussion within a motion in a second. That's okay.
That's why I made the motion, and get a second, then the questions can come, and then you can go through the list.
Let me read through the list, just so then I'd love to have the motion, if that's okay.
Okay.
So, the policies that we're talking about, the list of policies to go up for public review would be policy ICKA, religious beliefs, which we discussed briefly. Policy BBFA, local school governance teams. Policy GBAB, pay for performance, which is being rescinded. Policy GBE, professional personnel assignment, which has been reviewed. Policy GBL, professional personnel tenure, which has been revised. Policy GBO, professional personnel resignation. Policy GBRB, professional personnel time schedules. Regulation GBRBR1, professional personnel time schedules rescind. Policy GDB, paraprofessional positions, which is being rescinded. Policy JR, student records, which is being revised. And regulation JRR1, student records review. So those are the policies that is the recommendation of our administration, that we put those out for public review, and they've come through the policy committee, obviously. Mr. Worthy?
Again, I make a motion that we move that we put these policies out for 4 weeks for public review.
Thank you, Mr. Worthy.
No.
Ms. Davis.
Okay. I mean,
So this is the moment, so when we have a motion and a second, then we open the floor to all discussion. That I made a mistake and sort of invited that kind of conversation before there was a motion to be considered. So let's discuss any and every bit of concern about any and every bit.
okay, I would like to pull GBO.
Hold on, Greg. You have to consent first. Motion's on the floor.
Ms. Davis.
It's already said.
She said,
Okay.
So we have a motion on the floor to adopt this list. If there's concerns and discussion about any of the items, so if we'd like to discuss GBO?
Yeah, let me just say that GBO is a policy, just so that people are aware of, that deals with employees who have not followed through in terms of their contract obligations. When this was brought before the policy committee, I was fine with it. But that was because I never had firsthand experience with it. And last Friday at 6:10, I had experience with what we were doing it even before this policy had been adopted. I mean, in terms of the board being convened to move forward with the recommendation that a employee who had left their position or his position would be that the school board was being asked to push that, allow the superintendent to move that forward to professional standards.
I don't think
that's what this policy is about. This policy is not that at all. This policy is simply when a person resigns, and I'm not an expert on this, but then maybe we can ask experts to speak on it. We have to approve resignations, period. Not law, is that right? That's statute. We have to approve resignations. And so sometimes that resignation, because of family urgency or something, it happens in between our board meetings. And so if a family has to leave town and a person wants to go and apply for a job someplace else, they can't be released from their contract until we approve that we accept the resignation. So this policy simply says, give the superintendent the authority to approve the resignation. It's a resignation, they're gone. So this is not the same thing as a job abandonment. This is a resignation. The situation that we had last week was a different situation.
Ms. Williams, yes.
I just want to offer some clarity on my interpretation of that. This was in our policy committee meeting. This was presented to us by staff with those kind of examples.
Right.
What this policy says is not making exceptions. It is giving the total authority to the superintendent to accept resignations. This board, and it took me a while when I read this, when we brought this up at the work session, and it really dawned on me, it's not an exception policy. It is whole policy, giving that authority to the superintendent. It might cause some communication with maybe contacting the board if there are urgency items involved to do that. But I really questioned after I thought about this and thought about that is one of the board's most important duties is to act upon hiring with the superintendent's recommendation. And we have always had that go along with resignations. And when resignations were given, when they were in a provisional way to accept a resignation, it was always based on the board's approval, whether or not the board accepted that resignation or not. And I think in the few cases we were given no data, so I don't know how often this occurs, but in the cases where there's urgency involved, I think just getting an understanding from the board by phone call or whatever, to say, does anybody have a problem with that? If there is a sense of urgency, if we totally change this intent of this policy, I'm not going to form with that. And I would prefer pulling it for further discussions.
I concur with pulling it for further discussions.
And there, Dr. Myers, yes, please.
We had a legal description with this. Can we get that? Because I want to make sure that, because I'm here too in town in different things. I'm conflicted, so.
Well, there may be, language can be ambiguous, and so there may be some daylight between what is the intent to draft it. But do you have something to add, Dr. Myers, to our consideration, or Mike?
I think there's been a lot of misconceptions or misunderstanding in the community. Not among the board, but in the community, that this is an attempt by administration to take power from the board that you currently have. That's not the case. What would happen if we don't modify this language is that we would simply need the board to meet more often, especially in the summer. And because that's typically when we get a lot of resignations, and that's typically when there's a lot of traffic between people moving on and going to certain districts and making those personal and professional decisions. When we inform our neighboring districts that we typically don't meet in July, and there aren't as many meetings with the board, because keep in mind, we meet, we have that business meeting the second Thursday in June, and then we don't meet again until August. And so that's typically the most busy time of the year for people to resign and make decisions. You could simply say, well, let's not move forward with this policy, but we're making a commitment as a board to meet more often in the summer to accept resignations. That we were simply proposing this language to help staff members who are waiting on the Board of Education of Clark County to come back together to accept their resignations. Because what happens is that, someone will say, I got a new job in Gwinnett, and they make that announcement to us June 29th, but we're unable to act on their resignation until August. That's the logic and rationale behind presenting this.
So are they able to accept the job in Gwinnett? Or that's my understanding, is that contractually, they can't be on contract with us and accept another job.
And so it's one of those issues of we were simply proposing this to help employees. And so that's why I want to be very clear about misconceptions and how it's being read. This is not an issue of trying to take authority away from the board. We were simply trying to help staff members who are ready to make transitions away from the district and go to other places. We are unable to allow them to move on to their next district until the Board of Education, as the policy currently reads, till the Board of Education meets. We could continue to do what we have in place, continue to keep this policy in place, as long as the board says, and we are ready to meet more often during the summer.
I'd like to follow up on, I think some of the confusion might come from some of the wording. This is why this needs to go back. It says in the shaded area there, fourth line from the bottom, and then following, the superintendent may delay the release from contract until a satisfactory replacement is found. that wording that is only about the superintendent seems to be different from what the stricken wording is, which refers to the Board of Education as having authority. And I think this ties in with what Greg was talking about the hearing that he was a part of with regard to abandonment of contract, because it seems like the delay of release from contracts is not in the board's hands the way this is currently written. And so that makes things interesting if one is delayed from release and then basically feels like they have to walk away because there's no release and there's another job or another activity, then that can be grounds for abandonment of contract, perhaps. And so I think that wording needs some careful scrutiny back at the policy.
Can you play out what's the worst case scenario that you're concerned about here? Because I'm not getting.
Oh, well, the worst case scenario would be that a teacher asks for release of contract and a superintendent, we're supposed to be doing policy not with regard to people that are here, but 20 years from now, a superintendent doesn't do it for whatever reason. And then when that person walks away because they've got life to do, a new job, something, a better job, and they've just never been released, then that person could, if that's in Georgia, that person could potentially be hauled up before the PSC for abandonment of contract, and they could be punished for a situation in which a superintendent, not anyone here, but a superintendent would simply not have released that person from the contract. I just think that that's bad policy.
I thought this policy was interim. Is the superintendent can do it pending the next board meeting, or that's what I understood.
It says, the last line in the sheet is the Board of Education shall be notified of the resignations at the next regular meeting after the resignations have been offered and accepted.
But it says nothing about if the resignation is not accepted. There's a loophole here.
But we're talking apples and oranges. See, I've been through all of this, folks, in principle. What Dr. Means explained a few minutes ago is pretty explicit. During the summer, you are going to run into a problem in terms of abandoning the contract, because that person is not going to walk away from that contract until they know that they have a job in that county, DeKalb County.
The contract's expired over the summer, is that right?
Yeah, but see, they may have already signed the contract that was issued by Clark County sometime in April, and then during the summer, they have found another job and they want to move on. But let's say for right now, this is December, that's abandoning the contract, especially, let's say, special ed teachers, science teachers, math teachers. They're tremendously hard to find. And if a person just walk away from that contract, you have to follow the fair and dismissal law for the state of Georgia to be in conjunction with the PSC. That's the difference there. But what Dr. Means explained a few minutes ago, that will sort of help us in terms of meeting regularly, especially for the month of July. There has to be a call meeting to approve those people that want to move on to another district, because it's unfair to hold them in.
So the sticking point is that we don't want to meet in July? Is that
And I think the fact that, I got some calls on this one, and that's pretty much why I showed up to tonight. But if we're confused, it is confusing.
Sure.
It's not confusing to me.
I know, because you have all those years of principalship. So I'm going to support going back to policy and work out. And I wanted to say this. We usually are off in July, but this past year, we met all summer long. We had trainings, we had workshops, August. We worked this past summer. So that July break, we didn't have a break. And if something like this, a person's livelihood is dependent on that, I don't see why a call meeting wouldn't be a way to go. We met this summer, and we met a lot. So that's the summer off thing is not a valid reason.
Ms. Brooks, can you something to add to the conversation? Please.
The procedure has been, if a teacher submits a resignation and the superintendent wants to accept it, he has to put it on the personnel list, and that's in that long thing that you usually approve all together at the end of the meeting. This will allow him to accept it immediately, and the teacher will know sooner. If the superintendent does not wish to accept the resignation, the procedure is and has always been that he would convene a hearing. He would get the call from Ms. Monica or her predecessors around the board to convene a hearing. He would submit, he would send that teacher, and then the superintendent terminate, approve the contract, and there would be a hearing. That does not change. And that is still what the superintendent would do if he chooses not to accept the resignation.
Say that last little bit again. So the crux of the concern of a teacher changing contract or trying to go to a different district, that process remains the same?
Correct. If the superintendent chooses not to accept the resignation, there is no change. The change is if he chooses to accept the resignation, then he doesn't have to put it on the list for approval at the next board meeting.
Understood. Okay.
May I ask a question?
Please.
Mike, how often have abandonment of contract hearings been done in this district?
I have no idea. There have been no hearings at all over the last 5 or 6 years. It's unusual to do that because teachers typically value their license and hear and pursue that. For whatever reason, the teacher at the hearing that they just referred to chose not to even appear. Now again, that still does not mean that that teacher's license will be suspended or revoked. It simply means that it will be reported to PSC as termination or breach of contract, and PSC will take whatever action it chooses to do.
And I want to make sure we're not muddling two separate issues here. You know, is the issue under the policy related to the hearing we had or not?
Well, no, nothing, the hearing you had would not be affected by this policy change or no change.
Mr. Bybee, board members, community members, and I just had to double check my understanding with Ms. Dew. So the Professional Standards Commission has recently made it a requirement to have these hearings. So in the past, there were teachers who abandoned their contracts. They would say mid-October, I'm leaving. And prior leadership in human resources would simply send a form in to the PSC informing the PSC that that person abandoned their contract. So what's happening right now is not new practice. The difference is the PSC at the state level has required the hearings now. That's the difference. So there was always, if a teacher in Clark County, let's say a Spanish teacher at the middle school level decided that they were going to leave their job, and now we don't have a teacher for the students. They have to either go on Rosetta Stone or they don't have any world language instruction. What our past HR leadership did was they reported that person to the PSC, and the same action occurred. The only difference now is that the PSC requires the Board of Education to come together and have a hearing.
Due process. And just to be clear, these are folks who move and don't wait around for a replacement and are not within one of the exceptions that we generally release people from their contracts for, which is spousal moves and illness and all sorts of very humane things. Yes, thank you, Mike.
Well, I would like to make a follow-up to what Council just said. Under our previous policy that we have been operating under for quite a while, it states that any employee under contract with the Board of Education who wishes not to fulfill the terms of their contract must request in writing that the Board of Education release them from their contract. And then the next to the last sentence is, if the employee is not released, the Board of Education may report the abandonment of contract to the PSC. So I'm not sure if there have been abandonments, if they've actually followed this policy or not, that we're currently under.
I don't know about what internal operations, but as far as board hearings, if you read the rest of that second paragraph, it's stricken, must request in writing the Board of Education release the employee from the contract upon recommendation of the
sounds like in either event, it has been showing up on our list of personnel recommendations. That list of personnel recommendations, I assume, has had a variety of hires and resignations and all of it. These are all resignations we're talking about, I believe. And I assume terminations have been there as well. Terminations too.
So when we see resignations on the personnel list, and this was a situation, how would we have known that this was an abandonment or just a regular resignation? I mean, did I miss that on the personnel? You don't? So again, I think you're asking board members to make decisions when we don't have all the information. That's what I'm saying. Maybe that's something we need to do, because I don't know about any abandonments. Well, she said there were some though, but they're on as resignations. It says resignation, so it would be a normal, like, resignation. We wouldn't have known it was an abandonment.
Well, are you saying that even abandonments were listed as resignations?
So this actually kind of starts to sound like, you always ask Greg about, why do people leave the district and what information do we have about that? So again, if somebody resigns, then the thing that we can act on is the resignation. Then the other piece of that, was it because of an abandonment or because of whatever, I don't see how this policy can influence that.
Mr. Davis.
Don't we raise our hands anymore on this? Well,
I'm taking some leave from other people, I'm jumping in.
well, turn your head
Let's come up with a rule.
I always have a hand rule.
Let's come up with a policy, okay?
Thank you for your patience, Mr. Davis.
Yeah. Here's what my concern is, and I do appreciate, being corrected that it didn't apply to what happened last Friday, but I think it does, because when you talk about, and I think that John mentioned it as well, that's what he dealt with, but the personnel resignation, what I would like to see is, instead of just saying that the Board of Education may report this abandonment of contract, I want to know how the board proceeds with that. When there is and that's why to me it's an incomplete resignation. I'm all in favor of the circumstances that Linda stated about summertime, people sign their contract, and then somebody gets a gigantic promotion, and we don't want to tie those people up. But I think in the cases where we are not, where the superintendent and human resources make a determination that the employee was breaking their contract without due cause, I would like for us as a board to have, if it's coming to us, I would like for us to stipulate how it comes to us, what information, what are we looking for? We've dealt a lot with student discipline, and this board has been pretty out there in terms of, this is what we're expecting. When we're asked to remove a student from the classroom on a permanent basis, we're looking for certain pieces of information. We don't just throw something at us and say this child did something bad and that's it. And even if the child doesn't appear, we still want to have information, and we end up getting that information, and I do appreciate that. All I'm doing is, and I don't know how much of that's in policy, but I felt like we needed to have a very clear, as a board, a clear direction when the superintendent reports to us, we have a breach of contract. And so we need, according to the PSC requirement, we need a vote of the board to push this forward. And I just want to feel, at the end of the day, when I vote in that direction, I want to feel like I've gotten all the information that I need, and I can make a decision. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Williams.
Another question. When did VSC change that rule?
Ms. Williams, I'm not sure because Dr. Brennan filled those forms out last year, and when it was brought to me this year to fill out the forms for the review and the contract so far, I saw on the form that they're required that, so that's all I have. That's all.
Thank you. I do think this needs to go back to committee, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Anything to add? So we have a motion on the floor to adopt this, to send this list of policies to receive public comment for 4 weeks. I have a second on that motion. I hear a lot of concern and conversation, not only about, and I think it comes from this particular policy. But the interesting thing about these issues is it's that blend where the board's roles and the superintendent's roles of managing the district and managing the hiring and firing come together. This is where the relevance are relevant, and I'm hearing some confusion about what it is to do and how.
I just want to be very clear. We welcome the board to take this back to committee, and frankly, if you don't want to make any changes, that's fine. Then it becomes an operational issue of just being sure we meet consistently, and multiple times we'll have to have a quorum throughout the summer. And I think that's a very easy, fix without having to address the policy. If there are issues of confusion around this policy, again, we simply presented this to the board to assist many staff members who are looking to be released from their contracts immediately so that they can join the district.
Thank you.
So my question is this, I'm sorry. So I'm curious as to what information, I guess we're gonna take it back to policy, this is a question I want in there again, so I won't go there next time. Because I don't know that there's information that can be disclosed to us. Quite frankly, it's a personnel issues,
Right.
so I'm not sure what we're thinking we're gonna get.
Charles has his hand up. Charles has his hand up.
We're going to hear from Mr. Worthy, and then if somebody would like to make an amendment to the motion on the floor, I'd be happy to entertain that. Yes, Mr. Worthy.
Okay, we have adopted an agenda, and we're gonna follow parliamentary procedure, and I'm dead set against violating rules. I would say, go ahead, the motion's been made, seconded, we have a question, go ahead and put these policies out to the public, okay? Whatever comments gonna be made, it's gonna come back to the board, then you send it back to policy. Because if you do it now, you're talking about breach of this, and you're gonna breach parliamentary procedure, which I totally disagree with.
Well, then I'm not clear then, because if we vote and there is a majority vote that does not want to send these for the days, everything is dead.
Now, the rule is this, we've already adopted the agenda.
We've adopted the agenda, but we haven't voted on these policies.
I know.
Well, let's vote. Let's see how the vote goes. Let's see how the vote goes.
Right now, what we have is a motion on the floor to accept this whole list, to send this whole list of policies. It would be within parliamentary procedure to amend that motion to strike one of them from the list.
Mr. Chair, I think it's something that you also are able, the board is also able to substitute the amendment and make another motion for the floor that doesn't jeopardize the entire package of policies. And Mr. Chair, I'm sorry, I just want to clarify 3 things. One, since last year, we've actually provided more information to the board regarding personnel situations. So we've actually laid out where people are coming from when we hire them and where people are going if they tell us that information. So I just want to go on record as saying we have provided more information since last year. And then number 2, within our strategic plan, we said that we are going to develop exit survey data so the board has information as to why people are leaving the district. We're also, and it's not in the strategic plan, but we've also talked about creating
surveys as well, figuring out, so why do people stay? So, you know, it's got to be a glass half full and a glass half empty approach. We want to gather both information sources. So I think in terms of the board, if we're really committed to the balanced governance approach, you need data. And part of that data is to know why people are leaving so we can address it. And so if that's an issue, I think that's a fair question from the board. And while it's not in this policy, I just want the public and the board to know that's part of our work.
I don't know where, we're not going to vote on it.
Yeah,
but I will say this, I do appreciate, you're right, we've got more information about hires and resume. And I don't think that we'll ever get to a point where you're at a destination. There's always going to be something moving as a board, and we just need to be flexible. And when something pops up, we need to adjust to it. It's not solid stuff. I'm just shocked that resignations could have been abandonments. I'm shocked. I voted on something that somebody might have had a letter sent to the PSC, and I didn't know it. So those are things that when it comes to your attention, you fix it and keep it moving. But no, I'm not going to support this policy as is.
All right, this is the work.
I've got an amendment
Yes.
to the motion. Can I make an amendment?
Yep. Go ahead.
Okay, well, I want to talk to you too. I amend that BOA, all right? GBO. Oh, GBO be removed from this list so that the other policies can move forward for the 30-day. And that GBO be sent back to the policy committee, but the rest of them be pushed forward. That is my amendment. Is there a second?
Thank you, Mr. Davis. Is there a second to Mr. Davis's amendment? Okay. And so what we'll do is we'll first vote on the amendment to the motion. Not clap for the well. Okay. All in favor of Mr. Davis's amendment to the motion? Any opposed? Okay. So that amendment carries. So the motion has now been amended to include everything on our list except for GBO. And I will read through them just to make sure we're all on the same page.
You read?
I read it. I know. I'd like to read it again. We're talking about policy ICKA, policy BBFA, policy GBAB, policy GBE, policy GBL, policy GBRB, regulation GBRB, policy GDB, policy JR, and regulation JRR1. And the motion is to send these for public review for 4 weeks. All in favor? Any opposed? Excellent, thank you. We also have several policies that have been out for public review for 4 weeks, for which we've received no public comment. And these have been discussed at a previous meeting, and now it is the recommendation of our administration to adopt these policies. I'll go ahead and read through them. This is policy GAE, complaints and grievances, policy GBI, professional personnel evaluation, regulation GBIR1, professional personnel evaluation, policy GBRIG, without repeating the law, exhibit GBRIG-E1, certificate for EE serious health condition, exhibit GBRIG-E2, certificate for EE serious health condition, policy GBRJ, arrangement for substitutes, policy GCN, classified personnel separation, policy GBU, professional personnel ethics.
So moved.
Second. Mr. Davis, the motion to adopt these policies, and Mr. Worthy has seconded the motion. Any questions or comments around these? All in favor? Thank you. Any opposed? Thank you. Moving on in our agenda, we have a superintendent's report.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I've been told to make this fast. I won't say 5 minutes. I just want to thank Ms. Suggs and our 2 executive directors, Dr. Carletta Nolan and Michael Harris. They're going to be facilitating conversations with our local school governance teams next week, Monday and Tuesday, on how the LSGTs can leverage their innovation funds. And so Claire and Mr. Harris and Dr. Nolan will be working with our LSGTs to show them where our kids are based on each school's needs and giving them some suggestions and maybe pathways that they could go to support their schools. Some of our schools have their entire LSGTs attending these 2 sessions, and when we've split it, we're the east side and west side session. So we're really pleased with the turnout, and it's our job from a servant leadership standpoint to be in a position where we can support the LSGTs with their ideas for their innovation grants. So again, that's next week, Monday and Tuesday. Thank you, Ms. Suggs, for doing that work. On November 27th, there will be a special education town hall meeting at the Annex, the Wyatt Annex, starting at 6 p.m. just to allow families of special education students to come together and have conversations. I think this is always a healthy thing to do. And then finally, on December 3rd and 4th, I will be in the community hosting town hall conversations to allow the community to ask questions and to allow some dialogue. So the locations we'll announce next week, but that will be December 3rd and 4th. And again, we like to try to use a model of one night we're on the east side of town and the next night on the west side of town. That's the conclusion of my report, sir.
Thank you.
Whitehead Annex. Mr. President? Okay, and this speaks to some of what we've talked about in terms of hearing from the public. And I want to commend Dr. Means for the December 3rd and different 4th community meetings, community forums. I would like to have just kind of an understanding, so I don't step into it unknowingly, is board member presence there, is that inappropriate or appropriate? I mean, I'm trying to gauge that.
Sorry, you're referring to which meeting?
I'm particularly talking about December 3rd and December 4th, where Dr. Means is, meeting with the community to get feedback. So I'm just kind of looking for some type of guidance from this board.
Sure, let's explore that. What would be the typical domain in the content, I should say, of that meeting? What would that look like?
Well, it'll be driven by process in terms of some essential questions that we'll pose to community members and get their opinions, and then eventually have an opportunity for people to ask questions and get answers. So that'll be the format. In regards to, I can answer Mr. Davis's question.
Sure.
I think, I don't mind if a board member attends these sessions at all. I think what we have to be careful of is that if there's interest, and I guess, so in my past experience, what would typically happen is that Ms. Boddicker, or a person in Ms. Boddicker's role, would just poll the board to say, are you thinking about attending this session? If so, we just need to know, because if 5 or more of you attend, then we technically should host the meeting. Because when 5 or more of you are in the same place, it can be construed as a gathering of the board. And so I think that's the only caveat, that typically the person in Ms. Boddicer's role would just poll the board to see if you're interested in attending. If 5 or more of you say, yes, I'm going,
then we post it, just so people, the community knows that there is a gathering of 5 or more board members.
I just, raise
Go
my
ahead.
hand. I can work with that, but wouldn't it already be posted?
Well, no, because it's not a board meeting.
Okay, so you're going to post it like,
We would post it we would make it a posting of a board meeting if 5 or more of you say we're going to
Right.
attend. It's a superintendent
okay.
event.
Okay, so that's
right?
the
It's
difference.
a staff event.
Okay.
But
Gotcha.
if 5 or more of you say, I'm interested, I will be there, then it's incumbent on us to.
Okay.
to the board.
I got you.
Is that helpful?
It's very helpful.
And I think that's that type of the space where it's engaging with the public in a public forum, I think it makes a lot of sense to have more presence there. That's really going to be.
If I can go one step further, I mean, you give them an inch, they take them out, but what about in terms of I went to the LSGT two-day workshop, and there was discussion there by our
You're talking about the charter system?
yeah, the charter system, I'm sorry, yeah, but within that, there was discussion of LSGT teams. And, I know in the workshops that I attended, there were, it wasn't, some districts were very clear that they wanted board members, to be somewhat present within the LSGT community. Other districts, that was not being done. I talked to one district where they actually rotated, where board members kind of took their turns, just like we do used to do the parent advisory board. I'm not having that discussion right now, but the discussion in terms of meeting like with the members, kind of a community meeting where the LSGT members on the east side are, okay, he knows where I'm going with this, so go ahead and short circuit.
Yeah, I'm sorry to do so, but I think I just have an easy answer for you. These are public meetings. All the meetings that have been cited, Ms. Vodka can poll you she won't be in tomorrow, but she can poll you as early as Monday morning to see if 5 or more of you are attending to attend the LSGT meeting on November 12th or 13th, on November 27th for the special ed meeting, or December 3rd. So all 5 of those meetings, she will do a poll. If there are 5 or more of you planning to be there, and if there are 5 or more of you there, that's fine as well. We just have a legal obligation to post. That's all.
And sorry, just so the folks in the audience know what we're talking, the context that we're talking about. What we're trying to do is strike this balance between what is the job of the board and what is the job of the superintendent and his team. And it's often what we don't want to do is be involved in the administration of the school district, but what we want to do is be present in the community. And sometimes when the rubber hits the road, it gets a little confusing. So we're just trying to do it's an ongoing conversation that we figure out where it's good and appropriate and right for us to show up, and where it messes things up, where it creates situations and expectations and perceptions that we want to avoid. So that's the constant dialogue that we're trying to work through. This is a particular instance of that. Is that fair? All right. And we also have plenty of charter conversations on the horizon. Okay. Thank you for the superintendent report. Very quickly, I failed after summation of our policy discussion, I failed to thank your staff and all the people who worked so hard. Especially these policies involve lots of different people, lots of different work, and thank you for helping us get up to speed, helping us muddle through, understanding some of these things. It takes a lot of work, and we as a board appreciate all that's been put into those. The next item on our agenda is item L, the consent agenda. We have field trips, we have district Avid Path training, we have to approve the detention pond maintenance contract, approve intent to apply for early Head Start expansion grant, and all those are part of the record that the public can refer back to. Do I have a motion on the consent agenda? Moved by Ms. Davis, thank you. Is there a second? Second by Mr. Worthy?
Discussion?
Yes, very good.
Question, just a question.
Very good, because this
I
is
know
the
this is
consent
consent.
agenda, yes.
But under the approved intent to apply for early Head Start expansion grant, Dr. Means.
Well, we're not going to talk about
No,
individual
I
items.
want to ask for some information. Would you please give us some information on our relationship with Head Start in the future? And we have never heard what happened to our relationship officially with Little Ones Academy. And so that's the only thing I'm asking for.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second. Agenda. All in favor? Any opposed? Thank you. Item N, other agenda items. We have a approval of the 2019 legislative agenda. Is this something you'd like to talk through?
I make a motion.
I second that motion, Mr. President.
Moved by Mr. Davis and second by Mr. Worthy to approve what has been included in our packet as our 2019 legislative agenda. Some discussion, yes.
Two things. What we were handed, it still needs renumbering. Roman numeral 5 goes then to Roman numeral 7. That needed to be 6. At least on what's printed out.
Say that again, Dr.
Roman numeral 7 should be 6.
I think on the board docs,
Is
it's,
it?
they should have it attached, I believe.
Okay, okay, well, just as long as that's fixed. Let's see, I have a question, I think Greg is probably most appropriate. Greg, we talked about some other things that we would contact our legislative delegates about. I think one of them was changing our charter to extend the period of the contract of the lawyer. That's not on here. Is that going to come up from, do you know where that's going to come from?
That is something that, my way of thinking is that that's something that the administrative team, the central administrative team, should push for.
Right.
So, I mean, in terms of the legislative agenda, that's not part of that.
So would that come from the administration for a vote from the board?
Yes, it will be presented to the board.
Thank you.
I do want to, has this been seconded?
Yes.
Okay, because I would like to make an amendment to my amendment.
Your motion?
Your motion.
Okay, a motion to my amendment?
What do you mean on legislative?
Yeah.
Yes.
For parliamentary procedure, if the person who made the original motion wants to amend it, the chair may accept that amendment if there's no objection.
Thank you.
Fantastic.
Thank you for that.
Where do you see, I just lost my place here, I'm sorry. Where do you see number 4, promote teacher recruitment and retention? We would, I would like to see inserted where it says increase teacher salaries, add the phrase maintain the current structure of the teacher retirement system, comma, and then continue on where it says provide loan forgiveness for those who teach in high-need schools or subject areas, and ensure beginning teachers have effective mentoring and support. So
That's how it currently reads.
well, I mean, the thing is that technically we made the change before we voted on it. So that's, when we voted as a government relations committee, we didn't have that in there. So I was just trying to follow Robert's Rules of Order, but I'm fine with it.
So the current motion and second is right on because that language already being in there. Thank you. Any other discussion? All in favor? Any opposed?
I'm gonna start showing everything.
And I encourage the public to take a look at the legislative agenda. It's got some great things in there, and I think clearly articulates where the collective head of the board is.
And we are going to have a a community meeting on that will be discussed in our next meeting.
Fantastic. The next item on our agenda is the approval of partnership with the University of Virginia Partnership for Leaders in Education. Dr. Means, would you like to provide some, sorry, is there?
I'm ready.
Okay. Dr. Means, would you like to provide a little bit of context and a recommendation for us?
Yes, sir. The administrative team is making a recommendation that we invest in our principal leaders by participating in the UVA Partners and Leaders in Education program. It's truly engagement and investment in not only the building principals who are selected for participation, but also it creates the right conditions for the district. I think often when people think of this partnership, they assume that it's about the schools and the school principals who are participating. It's actually, there are conditions in the district that we're not operating well. And so as a system, we need to really recalibrate how we serve our students. It serves as an incubator for innovation for those, at a minimum, 4 schools, to really look at work differently and how they perceive the role of the building principal. The advantage of this program is that not only do you work with the College of Education in Virginia, but also you work with their world-class business school as well. Typically, when individuals ascend and eventually attain the principalship, they don't have certain executive acumen to make good decisions. This program allows principals and also our district team to focus on leadership, support and accountability, effective talent management, and looking at effective instructional infrastructure. We do have the contract. It is a $350,000 contract over 3 years. I think it was really appropriate. We had a board member last week make the statement after a representative from UVA was here to say, it sounds like there's as much work being done at the district level in growing the capacity of district level administrators as it is working with building principals. That's true. And so when you look at it from a 5-way split of the cost over 3 years, it's a $23,000 investment in district staff and the building principal, and then eventually it trickles down to the teacher leadership team at each school. We believe that this is it's another step towards us making progress and improving the service delivery model we provide to kids.
Thank you. And your recommendation?
My recommendation is that we move forward with the partnership.
Thank you. Is there a motion?
That's so moved.
Moved by Ms. Davis to do this engagement?
Yes.
Second. Second by Mr. Worthy. Discussion, please. Ms. Williams.
And as I recall, you mentioned this was a voluntary program as far as which schools,
Yes, ma'am.
no matter what the need in leadership.
There are 4 schools that have already, I met with our building principals and shared with them that this was before you. And I have 4 building principals who have said, we would like to be part of this program. And I think it's a good blend of neophytes to the principalship and veteran principals who are leading very difficult school communities who have historically underperformed on both sides of town.
And how does this compare? I heard a presentation by the chief turnaround officer that I found very intriguing. And I would recommend that we have that presentation here so people would understand that there's a lot of, it's not what I thought it was, but it is. Of course, you mentioned the relationship with UVA. And have you worked with them before?
With Dr. Thomas or
No,
with
with
UVA?
UVA.
I I have gone to their boot camp. I've been exposed to some of the professional learning that they provide. It's top notch. But you mentioned, if I may, Ms. Williams, you mentioned Chief Turnaround Officer Thomas. I actually had a chance to talk to him today. And I want to be very upfront and deliberate with you here. He wanted me to know, and so the community to know, his exact words were, he has no plans to identify any school in Clark County at this time. He said, no, maybe in April or May, we'll look at things again, but at this time, he has no interest. And so I think that's a good thing. He also went on to say, and I think it aligns with what you're sharing, Ms. Williams, he understands that the history of how his office evolved has a lot of angst and it creates a lot of ill will among people. He's really trying, he used the word, he's really trying to communicate with the education community in Georgia that this is not a takeover. And that his work is not a takeover work. And so and I know Dr. Thomas, he said, Demond, please let your community know that this is not takeover work and that I'm not interested in it. In fact, I have a lot of resources that I can help schools move forward with. And so I thought that was good, that was positive. Back to your original question, this partnership is identical to the work that the Chief Turnaround Officer is doing and implementing. In fact, Dr. Thomas is one of the main architects of the current program at UVA. And so he understands what we're proposing and his work is very similar. He said that he said in this job in Georgia, he's been able to tweak what he was able to collaborate and build in Georgia or in Virginia, and that is, he said that the tweak that he's added is working with boards and board
That's what I was
development.
going to mention. There is a board role in what he was doing, but I never heard the Darden School mentioned yesterday as part of his presentation. But again, I think what he's doing is going to be well received, and it seems to be making a tremendous difference.
So this proposal is asking the board to allow us to do the same work that Dr. Thomas is doing with select schools.
But again, he mentioned the board role, so that's why I was asking, if you're mirroring that, how does that come back to board policy and the board role? And
I think, so Dr. Thomas and I said that we're going to connect. I would like to hear more about how he's making that work with the board, and I want to try to make sure that we have those conversations with this Board of Education. You can't, because it was really interesting talking with him today, you can't do this work in isolation with the board. And so the board has to be, there's a role for the board to be engaged with this work as well. So Dr. Thomas and I will continue that conversation and collaborate and make sure that whatever he's doing with the schools that he has selected in those districts, that we can replicate that piece of the UVA work as well.
I didn't realize it was Dr. Thomas being connected with this.
He's not connected with this proposal.
Okay.
Yes.
Because I did hear him speak at GSBA, and he was very clear about the board roles. And he also said from his office, he has resources. He is not interested in taking over schools, but he had resources. And I hope if you're going to continue your conversation, we need to find out what resources that he could bring here. I was not here for the presentation, so I will not be voting for this tonight, but I do hope we continue this relationship with Dr. Thomas.
Yes, Mr. Davis.
Okay, I've got just 3 questions. First off is that, I think I feel very supportive of this, but one question is that I'm still a little bit questioning in terms of, we've got the CC RPI that has kind of triggered one of our schools to be on this 104 list. And then you had made reference to, we had other schools that were close to that mark. I would hate to jump over those schools who are close to that mark and hit a school that's more mid-range, or so to speak. Are we, now again, granted that the CCRPI is not a good measure. I think we all know that it's because it keeps changing every year for no other reason. But are we actually picking out not just schools that are willing to participate, but are we picking schools that really need to participate in your estimation?
Yes.
Okay.
And I think it crosses both experience, the level of experience for principals as well.
Okay. I just want to make sure that we're putting our money exactly where it needs to be, and not just who wants to come can come and who doesn't, that's fine too. Okay. Well, my second question is in terms of the cost. That $350,000, does that have to be paid all at once, or we pay yearly?
It can be paid yearly, and it can start with fiscal year 20. And so I think that's also an advantage. So the University of Virginia is willing to, because if you remember from the presentation last week from the rep from UVA, the work actually starts this spring.
Right.
But they're willing to invoice us starting July 1 of 2019.
So they would invoice us for that first year, kind of after they provide the service.
Correct.
And then the same thing the following year and the following year.
Yes.
Okay. And then my last question is travel and housing costs separate from, because you gave us a very detailed budget. Is that separate from?
Yes. So the times that we have to send our principals to Charlottesville for their training, that will be, that's a separate cost. And we would view it as it's kind of like going to a conference.
Okay. The reason I ask is I think in terms of, individual conferences, I think it'd be good from now on if we had like a ballpark figure about what the additional costs are, because when we see one figure and then if it's going to be, sizably more, it'd be good to kind of have some type of addendum or something.
And the only cost would be the travel and lodging, because they've incorporated all the registration fees in that $350,000.
Right. Right.
Good comments, thank you very much.
But there are no expenses for the UVA.
No, that's embedded in the 350.
Excellent, thank you. And we have a motion on the floor to approve this arrangement, and it's been seconded. Any last bits of discussion?
Yeah, it's kind of bookkeeping, but I'm just making sure. In terms of the use of Title I funds, this would be closest under professional development. Would you consider that as the closest descriptor?
I think for the district portion of it, we could use our title. We technically would use Title II. We have the ability to use Title II, but this clearly falls under the use of Title I as well.
As professional development
Yes.
One additional question, and I'm not asking for it tonight, but if it's not public, but we have one school that is pretty obviously going to be included. Or when will we know the other schools that are being worked with?
The 4 principals who have come forward and said, Dr. Meads, I would like to be part of this program. I've shared with them, if the board moves forward with this proposal, I will share that information with you Friday. And then eventually we make a public announcement to the entire school community.
Great, thank you. All in favor? Any opposed? That is a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 2 vote. Can you catch those? Opposed were Dr. Knox and Ms. Thornton. And the motion passes. Thank you very much. Item N on our agenda, moving on, we have, we received a number of personnel recommendations and a recommendation that we adopt these. Is there a motion? Please.
I move that we adopt the personnel recommendations as submitted by the district.
Thank you.
And I second.
Davis. And thank you for the second, Mr. Davis. All in favor? Thank you. No opposed? Then if there is, yes, please.
Just ask one more question. I was really impressed again by the REACH scholarship, young people, and in trying to give them some visibility. What year are we in? Is it 4, 5?
We're in year 5 because our first graduates will be graduating this May. Our first graduates from the REACH scholarship program graduate. They're seniors.
So this is the first graduating class of the REACH scholars.
I believe you recognize the graduation.
Yes, I actually had a pleasant and outstanding opportunity to meet with representatives from Brad Bryant and Sarah Neely from the REACH program. Our director of counseling, Tessa, who's been overseeing this REACH program, has really brought, I believe, a high level of energy to the REACH program, and I made a commitment on behalf of our school district that we're going to double down on our support of the REACH program. It's a fascinating and wonderful program. We need to do a better job of supporting those young people and also recognizing them. And so we've started those conversations of how do we recognize those kids at graduation? Do we get them a special honor corps? And so Tessa's doing a great job in making sure we explore how we recognize those kids in a more deliberate way and support them as well.
And I hope that they're recognized in the honors program at their school that they're in. And I'd like to see at least a graduating class come before the board. And another question I had, I know you're supposed to have mentors. What kind of mentors are being assigned to these students?
So there is a mentor component of it. I believe Rick Dunn has been the leader of gathering mentors for our REACH scholars for the past few years. And when you say what kind of mentors, there are people who are very committed to, and community leaders who have volunteered to be mentors for these young people.
There are some community people.
Yes.
We need to make sure.
I think we should.
Express that appreciation.
It was interesting when I met with Ms. Neely and Mr. Bryant. They recognized Rick Dunn has been a forerunner in this. Charlie Maddox, who's also just an active community member, has been a mentor in the past. So we have been fortunate, and they reference the fact that they've been impressed with our mentor component of this work.
Thank you, great suggestion.
I think it's a great suggestion for us at the May meeting. I know I'm trying to wrap it up. But I think it's a great suggestion for us to recognize not only those scholars who are graduating, but also their mentors.
Thank you. And thank you for sticking with us through a marathon of a meeting. Everyone gets high fives for sticking around to the bitter end. Ms. Orr.
I would like to make a motion that they be adjourned. I raised my hand.
Yes. Second?
Y'all stay, y'all want to. Y'all stay if you want to.
Second by Ms. Davis, all in favor? Thank you.